Hello and welcome to another episode of An Imperfect Leader, Leadership in After Action, a series where leaders look back at decisions they've made and consider a series of questions. I'm Peter Stiepelman, I'm your host, and I'm an imperfect leader. I spent more than 20 years teaching and leading, first in the Oakland Public Schools in Oakland, California, and then in the Midwest, Missouri to be exact, where I was a teacher and a principal and assistant superintendent and then the superintendent of the fourth largest district in the state. I'm constantly striving to learn from my experiences and from the experiences of other leaders. The aim of this podcast is to lift the learning and lift the imperfect leaders up. That way, when you hear the term imperfect, you'll see strength. Strength from the candor needed to recognize imperfection as a real advantage. Let's get started. Hello, imperfect leaders. You can now pre-order my book, An Imperfect Leader, Human-Centered Leadership in After Action, by going to Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'm told pre-ordering is an important part of the book publishing process, so thank you so much for your support. Once in a while, our children ask us about what school was like when we were kids. And I try not to get too excited when they ask me this because I know my enthusiasm will almost immediately shut down the conversation. I'm the father of teenagers who think I talk too much. They're most offended when I talk to strangers. It's so embarrassing. I wish I could help it, but I'm just a curious creature. So when I talk about what school was like for me, it was a fairly, traditional model. Very few electives and very few on-ramps and off-ramps to explore different pathways. And my guest this week uses those exact terms, on-ramps and off-ramps, to describe what Diploma +1 looks like in her district in Iowa. She also talks about the pandemic federal funds, they're referred to as ESSER funds in our conversation, and how they used thoughtful phases for bringing technology tools and internet access to her community. Because as she reminds us, learning is taking place after 4 p.m. I loved her quote from Adam Grant's book, Think Again. She talks about managing the tension between wanting to accelerate a decision and waiting on a decision. My guest is Dr. Vickie Murillo. And in her after-action review, she describes the creation of Diploma +1 pathways. And for every good reason, she is so excited about one of her district's kids from Council Bluffs, Iowa, who is a QuestBridge scholar. I've linked to QuestBridge scholars in the episode notes so you know what a big deal that is. Thanks for tuning in. Today on An Imperfect Leader, Dr. Vickie Murillo is my guest. Dr. Murillo has served as the superintendent of the Council Bluffs Community School District since July of 2017. And as superintendent, Dr. Murillo has charted a course to ensure all students are future ready. She's done this by being a champion for Early College Academy, located on the campus of Iowa Western Community College, which allows high school students to graduate with both a high school diploma and an associate degree. And she has proudly supported innovative programs like TradeWorks Academy, which is a certified pre-apprenticeship program for high school sophomores and juniors. And her list of achievements and interests are really, really impressive. Vickie, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So Vickie, I'm so glad to meet you. In our correspondence a few months ago, we learned we both have been mentored by Dr. Mary Laffey. And for you, she was a professor. For me, well, she and I were actually on the same cabinet when I was an assistant superintendent. And she remained a professional presence in my life when I was superintendent. So what a small world.
That is a small world.
I learned about you when I was reading about Blink, and it was this quote in particular that caught my attention. And I wonder, would you mind reading that quote? I think I've just sent it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to. The quote reads, "It was super important to us that our students have equity, that no matter where your zip code is, no matter where you live in the district, that you always have access to the internet."
What is Blink, and why is that so important?
Well, Blink is a community Wi-Fi, and that was important to us because we, like other districts, ran out and quickly bought laptops thinking we got to be one-to-one. And what the former superintendent quickly found out is not all students were able to connect to the internet after they left school. And so through some strategic planning, we had a great partnership with our city, with a foundation we have, and with a few other partners like Google and some other were around the table. And they began, because this conversation started before I came in 2017, talk about how can we provide access to all children, regardless of where they live, to the internet because they all had a Chromebook. And so what we did was we continued, and they started rolling it out in phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We were moving into phase 4 when the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, I'm very thankful for the ESSER dollars because it allowed us to move this train much faster than it was moving. Because really we only had the resources to do a phase a year off of our school budget and our partnerships, donations, and contributions to the project. And so with the ESSER dollars, we have now finished phase 8. So no matter where you live in our school district boundaries, if you do not have internet access at home, you now have free internet access. And that's important because our students are able to continue their learning no matter, after 4 p.m., they still have access.
So let me ask you this. There are some school districts that try to think creatively. They don't have a long-term plan. It really sounds like you and your community partners put together a long-term plan. So, they'll put Wi-Fi on a bus and park that bus in a central spot. And that is a solution. And I give kudos to those who are thinking creatively to bring access. They will leave the Wi-Fi or expand its reach a little bit so that it reaches into the parking lot. So if you needed to pull into a parking lot, download something or upload a project, you could do that. However, those are somewhat limiting. And it sounds like you really, inside and outside the organization, came together and said, this is a utility that everybody needs. It shouldn't be something that only some people have. So how does it look? Are there towers all over town? What is exactly?
Yeah. One of the partners that I left off was Mid-American. They are our partner that provides, they have the poles. We'll just say that, right? They have the light poles that we put our AP, our access points on. And really having that partnership with whoever your utility provider is in your community is critical. Because you have to come together and we do pay. We pay so much to put them on. We pay so much to have access to get up and go up. And, you do all of those easements and all of that that comes into play with the contracts. But to know that they're at the table with us and to know they care about our kids and they want them to have that connectivity is huge. To know that our mayor and our city government will come together at that table. And it does help, I will say, to have a name like Google in our backyard because they have a data center here and see them at the table and supporting this work. And then we have a really great foundation that come to the table and provide. So all of us kind of put our hand in the middle and say break. It's all about kids at the center. How do we get them the access? How do we get them the connectivity? Because we do have, most people talk about their subgroups. And I don't ever want to give an excuse for poverty, but I can tell you my largest subgroup in Council Bluffs is poverty. And so our children needed that access and we have provided that. That's equity. That's across, no matter what it took, we provide.
It's amazing how powerful it is when your entire community, city, county, schools, your business community, and yeah, it's nice that Google is there. I will tell you though, I think that each community has its anchor that will come forward and want to do things if asked. So I want to follow up. You also said in this article that I read from AASA that besides just having that core instruction during the day, it allows, when I say it, meaning Blink, allowed us to supplement and continue to enhance and propel those students that are really hungry to learn more. I wonder, why is that important? What have you learned about how kids learn today as compared to the traditional ways that children have learned?
The pandemic really pushed us to see things differently. Before we had laptops sometimes in classrooms, we were still in straight rows. We weren't collaborating. We weren't allowing our students to have that experience of taking the resource and making it theirs and becoming owners of their learning. And before they had the opportunity to always have that continuous learning, after they left school, it was kind of over. And now what we've done through our resources with our laptop and our connectivity is we've been able to allow them to have that continual learning around with their peers, collaborating at night, even emailing their professors or their teachers and getting those responses and being able to upload their work I mean, it's just being able to continue to research beyond what they got in that 55, 58 minutes in that classroom. And I'd like to learn more. So how do I dig into it? And that's where we want that continuous learning to be. At the level and the curiosity and the interests that our students have, we want to open those opportunities for our students to continue to achieve.
You use that word exactly as I was thinking it. It was amazing. As if you were reading my mind, I thought the word curiosity. Our kids are curious, they're creative, and to limit them to the four walls of their building and to say, well, hold that curiosity, we'll talk about it tomorrow. That's just not how kids learn these days, nor adults, quite frankly. We're always now, we can go onto YouTube, we can go onto other types of platforms and see how things are done if we want to repair things or want to create things. And so, yeah, that's really fantastic. In the leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension called leaders learning work, which really is, it's the mind or the brains of an organization's work. And inside that dimension is a term, serving as lead learners. And for me, lead learners do two things. One, they learn alongside the people in their organization. So they don't just send people to trainings, they go with them and they learn together. And then equally important, some might even say more important, is that lead learners are ones who are willing to admit when they've made a mistake. A wonderful and intelligent leadership author, Linda Lambert, wrote this about leaders as deep learners. How mistakes are handled is a major stimulant for learning and provides salient insight into the character of the leader as well. When a leader doesn't take responsibility for his or her or their mistakes, or becomes angry and defensive if they're pointed out, this individual is incapable of becoming an excellent leader or learner. And Vickie, I was thinking about this quote when I was preparing for our conversation, because I have seen in the literature for your district how intentional you have been about creating pathways. And I hope that we'll get to talk about that in a little bit. I do want to ask you, what does the term an imperfect leader mean to you?
Well, I think we're all imperfect. I don't think we can say there's one leader or one person that is perfect. And I think it makes you reflect on, do you know where your strengths and weaknesses are? And I think a good leader, never a perfect leader, but a good leader is one that surrounds themselves with a team of individuals who have those strengths where you feel like your weaknesses are. And you form a team. I always believe, I come from a coaching background, and your team is only as good as your bench. And so I often sometimes see myself as a coach, and my cabinet as my starters, and my administration kind of becomes that strength in that bench that begin to lead, because we know what the Wallace Foundation says around leadership. Leadership matters. When I think about being an imperfect leader, I'm very thankful for the team I have around me, that I can rely on their strengths when I'm weak. And I can begin to see how I can become stronger through watching them lead and the decisions they make. It's not my job to be I. It's all about the team.
An Imperfect Leader, Leadership in After Action is supported by ILAA, a firm dedicated to supporting aspiring new and established leaders. For more information, please find them at human-centeredleaders.com. We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest is Dr. Vickie Murillo, Superintendent of Council Bluffs Community School District in Council Bluffs, Iowa. In this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they made, and then we discuss it a little bit. So Vickie, what happened?
I think I would like to share a little bit about beginning our new program that we call Diploma +1 Pathways. And when I think about thinking through the decision, I think about our first year. You know, when you think about your implementation year, that's where you can stumble and fall sometimes. That's where you can misstep. And I remember when I got to Council Bluffs in 2017, I was meeting with a kind of an executive coach, and he asked me what my vision was for Council Bluffs. And I said, I want every student to graduate with a high school diploma and a second piece of paper. He said, what is that? What do you mean by that? And so I began to talk about the pathways and our students graduating with associates or diplomas or certifications and apprenticeship programs in partnership with our community college that sits in the back door, Iowa Western. And I had been on the campus and saw the facilities and the wonderful things that I mean, his facilities, it would have taken me $2-3 million to build a facility to come close to what he already had. So I had what he needed, and that was students, enrollment, and he had what I needed, and that was the facility. So you wonder then, well, how did you go wrong? What did you do? And as we began, I pulled in my chief academic officer and the team, and I began to share my vision. And I could tell they were getting excited. They could feel it. They could sense it. They knew that was a next level for us. But the one thing we didn't do well was bring our high school administration with us. I think we were a little concerned, thinking back. We read the book by Adam Grant, Think Again. And, in that book, Think Again, he really pushes you sometimes. It says, sometimes in your organization, you have to go before everybody's ready to go. And so we kind of were looking at that model. And my chief academic officer at that time, he was just so ready to see these opportunities for our students. And he knew we could do some of them quickly. But the step I wish I could go back maybe and play is we were putting things, the wheels were going in motion before my high school administration completely understood the vision.
So I'm going to stop you there as we break this down into these components, because we're about to get into what got overlooked. So just to recap, you have this program, this pathway. It's not even a program, because a program sort of, diminishes the importance of what it means for children. You're talking about kids who can graduate high school with either their associate's degree or credits towards that, or an industry recognized credential, so allow them to go right into the workforce after they've graduated high school. Cross the stage, paper in hand, job in hand, become a contributing member of for their community, for their families, for themselves. Amazing. That's an amazing vision. And I do think that there are school districts across the nation that are really waking up to this next phase. So the fact that you have established this is just amazing. Then you have to take a step back and say, okay, we're ready to go. We've got these partners. And it sounds like what got overlooked were your administrators. And I would like to know also, how did some of your AP teachers react to this? Because if there isn't a clear understanding on the why, it can create a level of discord in the organization. So what got overlooked? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so a little bit of thinking back and through our reflection and debriefing and sitting down with my high school administration, we began to push out early college academy, which we knew we had students ready to go and would graduate with their associates in a year because of the concurrent credit and AP courses we had. And as we began to roll that out and then set up, our health science pathways and looking at that, I could tell that they were worried, just as you stated. You're taking the smartest kids, you're taking the best of the best. There goes our AP program, there goes our concurrent, what about our STEM pathways? And they began to not quite grasp how we could do both. And when I sit down with them and said, we have a cohort of 50 on the campus, the college campus every day. They come back, they're still tagged to the school. They can still do extra and co-curricular activities. But what they learned was 25 students, 25 seniors, and 25 juniors among two schools that run 12 to 1,300 a day. I am not taking all of your students that can be successful and continue, because we created a pathway for our traditional students that love high school. They want to be there every day. They want to do every concurrent credit. They want to do all the AP courses. So we have quite a few students, that are in that pathway still, in the traditional school. So once we began, I think they needed to see how the new pathways would not be a disruptor, but that they would become those opportunities for our students to achieve more and accelerate. Because I kept saying, why make them wait? If they're ready, why do we wait? And currently, every day we have 247 students that are on Iowa Western's campus. But inside the schools, we have 780 first semester and 1,207 students second semester that are in pathways inside our high schools. So now I'm able to lay out the data for them by the pathways. And last year, 73% of our high school students graduated with a second credential. So once I think I could lay out the data, and I started thinking about Adams Grant's book, Think Again, because I kind of was thinking, I moved a little faster than my high school, administration and counselors felt ready. But if we had not pushed to accelerate, would we have been able to bring them along? Or would our process slow down trying to help them understand the why and what these pathways look like? And so that's the piece that I reflect on. Did we do okay? At the end, we're doing great. Everybody's bought into the vision. You can walk into any of the schools. We now have a true thread line from K to 12 about the pathways, and our parents are getting the information as they move through. And so it's become really our vision, our strategic vision for the district that even our mayor can talk about in Council Bluffs. So it's caught. But that was the little piece where I said, I wasn't sure, did we move faster than the high schools were ready? Did I bring along, if I could look for a misstep, could I have done that differently? And I probably could, but I still think it may have taken the data, because our students, even through the pandemic and the college stayed open with online courses, our kids were still going through pathways. Their learning didn't stop.
It sounds like, first of all, you were able to communicate and articulate this vision to say this isn't an or. They will do this or they will do this, as opposed to this is an and. And how can we provide this opportunity? And I don't think we've pointed out that this is at no cost to the kids. This is part of their public school education. And it's, I think, important because sometimes public schools are labeled as traditional and without the kind of innovation that we see every day in our public schools across the nation. So I think that's important. I wonder, as you were considering whether or not it was overlooked about whether or not to include your high school principals, what power may have been seen if they had been part of that original planning. And I don't know if that's kind of what you're alluding to, is to say, if they had been part of our planning group, I wouldn't have to convince them. They would be the champion right from the beginning, as opposed to seeing it afterwards and going, yeah, this is amazing.
I think you're correct, Peter. I think the one that really brought the aha around the high school principals really having a deep dive in this is when we started with TradeWorks, because I needed almost $2 million to create new labs in both of the high schools. And I can tell you that with our foundation and our community, we raised those with private dollars. So be able to really braid private and public dollars really is something also that I'm very proud of in Council Bluffs. It's not, schools can't do it alone. We've got to have that community that buys in to what's good for kids and also, really steps up to support it financially.
There's an important word that you used, and I think something that superintendents who are listening to this conversation might take with them as they consider how they talk with their communities. You use the term braided. And I love that as a term because it really speaks to an inextricable link. It's not just partner where you're side by side. It is, we are tied together. My success is your success. Our success is our success. So that's cool. What did you learn about relationships, or what new relationships were formed?
I think the best relationship that was formed was with the president of the college. A lot of the college professors were a little worried about having our students in their classroom. And when I visit those classrooms, you can tell our high school students from their students. We have students that are on their honor roll. We have students that, in fact, he always, because last year we had 117 students that walked his stage and received their associates, their diploma, or their certification credential before they walked ours. And he'll say they graduate with me before they graduate with you. And it's and having kids share their story with me is another great relationship that's being established. And then also having teachers who were, yesterday I met with a teacher that is driving our STEM program. And I asked him, where do you see STEM going? How do we make the STEM pathway stronger, bigger, better? We have Project Lead the Way. Yes, everybody has Project Lead the Way. How do we go next level up? And he also said, when this first started, I was worried I was going to lose all my kids out of the STEM program. So to begin to have those conversations with our staff and our students, I'm thinking of this year's Questbridge Scholar, Jennifer. When I take our state legislators in to, like every other year, to kind of visit with students and see the program on Iowa Western campus. And Jennifer began to share with us, she'll be the first student in her family to graduate from high school. She's also going to be the first to graduate from college, and now she's a Questbridge Scholar. And she said, my family doesn't understand how this can happen. And she's just so excited. But on the other hand, I'm sitting with another young lady that wants to do diesel. And she's in the pathway for auto diesel, and she's going to get her certification. She knows exactly what she wants to do. And she will sit across the table from us and say, I don't really love traditional school, but I love this. So I'm going to finish that because I get to do this.
Oh
and
my gosh, I have chills.
Isn't that amazing? And
Yes.
so really what my vision is to provide as many opportunities so that no matter what your passion is in life, I'm going to give you an opportunity to experience that before you graduate at no cost to you. So I'm going to help you avoid student debt.
I think about the relationship you have formed with your state legislature, and whether you want to believe it or not, superintendents are politicians. Maybe it's better to say we're storytellers because we are not lobbyists. We are storytellers. We talk about the amazing things that are happening in our district, and we really engage our communities to care about their schools, particularly when we're asking for tax increases and things like that. They have to think that they're getting some value out of this. And so the value of bringing your legislators over to this campus and seeing your students immediately impacts your school district, but your region, and
Yes.
And why they should care and invest in your area. What frustrated you though?
I think, I don't know that I found a lot of frustration. I think always we'd love to see it go faster. I was very concerned and alarmed because we're in year 5 of this. So many people don't know. My first year here, by second semester, I had early college in place. And so then we went after TradeWorks. And then from TradeWorks, we went after, our caps. And then from that, we went after, what's available in the high schools. And that's, when I got here, the students took a lot of concurrent credits, but they took them all over the place. So when they went to transfer, they didn't always have enough to transfer in with an associate's, but they left me with 32, 36, 40, credits. And so I said, we're going to align this. We're going to align this so that our students leave with at least year 13 done, their freshman year of college. And I've gotten 2 emails this year from 2 students that says, I have now finished my 4 years in 2 years. And next year I'm starting my master's program. And both of them are in Iowa State University. And so for our kids to recognize that they were able to do this and go in on scholarships, and these are students that were not in early college academy. These are students that stayed in the traditional pathway. And that's what I say. A lot of people think I'm just trying to get them into trades, or I'm just trying to get their associates, or I'm just trying to get them into CNA so that they can start, because we do want them in stackable programs. And when you talk about that, the credentials you keep referencing or the diploma they can get is stackable. And so when you stack those, we talk about no dead ends, on-ramps, off-ramps. And I want our students, because you know what research says, once we get them on a campus, once we help them believe they can succeed and they see they can pass the course, a college course, there is a higher percent that they'll be completers. But the frustration hit when I got to the pandemic and I started worrying, how is this going to impede our progress? But when the college allowed the online learning to continue and the businesses continued to seek out, especially now, looking for employees that are trained. We have a welding business here called Powfinger. They purchased, I have 2 sections on that campus that are just my kids in welding. Can you believe that? That's not, and then we have kids that feed into some of their sections, but I fill up 2 sections, bought all of our welding supplies. You should have seen my kids' face when they walked in with those tools, bag. I mean, those kids were putting those coats on.
If they're welding, I don't want to see their face. I want it to be covered.
Yep, they were putting on all that stuff, and it was like almost like, oh my God, somebody cares about me. And I'm like, you bet we do.
Was there anything that you could have done differently? So there was what got overlooked was sort of like the system and you as your team, but then individually what got overlooked, or what could you have done differently?
That's a good question. I know I've left out talking about my school board, and I probably should let you know that when I presented this vision of making, developing the pathways and making post-secondary inescapable for all children, they first looked like they weren't sure this could really happen. And maybe instead of just coming in like this excited new rookie superintendent, let's go, we can run and jump over the walls and take the city, let's do it. Maybe coming in with a little bit more of an understanding of the why. But I can tell you this, I've got a fabulous school board. And if you don't have a great school board, it makes things more difficult. They care about kids, they care about my teachers, they care about our district. And I've been blessed to serve under their leadership.
My guest again was Dr. Vickie Murillo. I really feel like the universe had arranged our meeting. In addition to having been influenced by Mary, my mother-in-law's family comes from Council Bluffs, Iowa. So I just knew from knowing that side of my wife's family that the strength of character and the strength of spirit, all of that exists in Council Bluffs. And you have said that at the Council Bluffs Community School District, we believe schools are at the center of our work. And it's clear that you're really working incredibly hard every single day so that, in your words, every student graduates with a high school diploma and a second credential. What a pleasure to have met you.
Thank you so much, Peter. It was my pleasure and honor to be with you today. Thank you for allowing me to share of the good work in Council Bluffs.
Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created the Daruma doll butterfly artwork. Imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It is a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. And I'm proud to be an imperfect leader, so I hope you'll join me next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader, Leadership in After Action.